Good morning, good afternoon. Oh my gosh, is it afternoon? It's Sunday. It's Sunday afternoon. I am struggling with some major allergies today. So if I seem a little puffy-eyed and runny-nosed, just know the ragweed in Minnesota is growing and I am feeling miserable. And if you suffer from allergies, you know what I'm saying when I mean I was in bed last night with a tight chest and sore throat and runny nose. So, despite it all, I'm here to give you some tea related to Leah Messer and Jeremy Calvert. Now, Leah and Jeremy in this last season were getting pretty flirty even after since she's now single from her split with Jason and he has left his girlfriend, Desi. And these two have been alluding on Instagram that they're spending some time together. They've shared photos and they've done all kinds of cute things. She shared a photo only a few weeks ago talking about there was nothing to see here, but they're doing it for the kids, which literally makes no sense because they were dressed up and at a bar together. If it was for the kids, you probably would not be at a bar with your ex-husband. And if you remember, they were on the reunion show discussing their relationship, and it seemed rather open-ended where she said that they have been having fun on that trip, and she was giggling, and even on last season, she talked about how they were hooking up or hooked up or whatever. So this is a relationship that had at one point seen better days. And if you remember, these two actually got back together all the way in, I think it was 2011. 8 years ago they met. Or almost 8 years ago. And they met shortly after she divorced Corey, the father of her twins, and she was married to him for 2.5 minutes before she cheated on him with Robbie Kidd. And then she hooked up with Jeremy within 2 seconds. And then all of a sudden they were like slam, bam, like insta family. And she was pregnant. They were married very quickly. As quickly as the marriage put together, it started to falling apart. If you remember, she went through some issues with anxiety medications. She had a very tough delivery with their shared daughter, Adeline, or as we know her today, Addie. And during that time, she became dependent on pain pills, which then later turned into anxiety because of her dependence on pain pills. So doctors prescribed her anxiety medications, which she eventually became addicted to and resulted in some very questionable behavior, including excessive spending and if you all remember in 2015, Jeremy tweeted about how she cheated on him with Robbie Kidd. Yay, Leah, going back to the old good stuff. So she's alluded to here and there, like what caused the end of the marriage. You know, Jeremy working as a pipe layer in the pipelines, for the oil pipelines rather. He's gone a lot. He works far away. He's gone for weeks at a time. Their distance during the relationship did not help. But in a recent podcast on her new podcast, which is called Pressing Pause to Reboot, and this episode was actually taped while she was in Hawaii with Kale Lowry, and Kale was the guest. Now, she hosts this podcast with some guy named Brian and another person named Lindsay, and Lindsay and Brian like to interrupt a lot and speak over things, and Lindsay is on this podcast spent more of the time interrupting the two of them than actually letting them talk. So, however, they answered questions on this one about learning how to say no and what happens in relationships when you can't say no. Now, this was interesting because this is where Leah started talking about her, and I'll link the full podcast for you guys if you want to listen to it. I listened to it for its entirety, so you don't have to. The audio is really terrible, though. I will give you a caveat. She is literally, I think, poolside while she's filming. You can hear water splashing, and they're drinking. I don't know. She says she's drinking a margarita, and Kale's doing something. And because they're like in Hawaii, the reception's not the best. They sound very far away. So listen at your own risk. So she is talking about how, like, what happens when you can't say no? And so she brought up two specific things. So she discussed how in the past, her inability to say no led her to making extremely poor decisions in her relationships. And she said that her inability to say no to things, even though she knew it was wrong, led to her cheating on Corey Sims. And maybe alluding to it was what led her to cheat on potentially Jeremy. She said that at the time she didn't have the self-esteem or the foundation in order to make the right decisions as an adult, and she was suffering from this complete lack of self-esteem, so she wanted to please everyone and say yes to things even though it wasn't correct. Okay. That also made me think that maybe this could be alluding to the fact that the foundation that she had wasn't built because she had been on MTV this entire time and therefore was never really forced to grow up and have to fend for herself or her children because she could rely on the cash-ola from MTV. So she goes on to say a few minutes later, then she sort of switches the topic to money. And then this is sort of where I get back to the fact, like, this is a reminder that these girls are so far removed from what they were when they first started as broke and like struggling teen mothers to discussions of how they cannot say no to giving money to friends and family who need it. Now, Leah said that her excessive spending was the catalyst or the cause of her marriage dissolving from Jeremy. So this was them back in the day. Oh, look how cute. Oh, Leah and Jeremy, to be young again. In truth, she's only 29 years old, so she's still quite the baby. And there they are this spring at the reunion show. So she said that when her marriage was going on, she was spending so much money and giving money to pretty much anyone in her family that would ask for it. And if you recall, she has a very tumultuous or estranged relationship with her father. And so she said that during the marriage, she actually gave her father $40,000. 40 grand. She straight gave her dad a check for $40,000 just so her dad would stay around and be in her life. And this obsession with helping people out, not saying no, giving cash to people, and helping out family that don't deserve it is ultimately what led to her and Jeremy splitting. I don't know that I actually believe that because she was also addicted to pain pills. They also fought about, his work. She cheated on him. I think there was a lot of things that caused this divorce. I ultimately think her addiction to anxiety medications is what pretty much caused the excessive spending, probably caused the cheating, and led to a lot of the problems in their marriage. But she was blaming it all on the cash flow and said that now she's in a completely different place and that she no longer lends money to anyone. She actually said that she has a rule now that if she even lends you $5 and you don't pay her back, she will never lend you money again. She said that setting boundaries with her friends and family has become critical so that she's not taken advantage of. And she said that the fact that she has money from MTV she doesn't want that to change who she is. And that has also led to her ultimately giving people so much money because she didn't want her friends and family to see her as someone that was changed by money. So she wanted them to still think she was humble. And by being humble, she thought she could just give money to everybody. Well, again, this goes straight to the point of these women are not teen mothers. These are women that are very far removed and have an excess of $40,000 to just throw at someone that they want to stay in their lives. Which is really sad. I mean, obviously her father was using her, if that's the truth. And that's kind of the abandonment of her life, right? Like, she doesn't have a father. She doesn't have someone she can trust. She only has, she's had her stepfather for years, but her own father has always left her. And there's always that, anytime a single one parent leaves, there's always that desire within that child to be accepted by that parent. And the desperation she must have felt to just, if I give you this money, you'll stick around. And the amount of stress that must have put on their marriage, I can't even imagine. Now, where does this... Yeah, she has a lot of excuses for cheating. I absolutely agree, Samantha. I think ultimately this marriage dissolved for a number of different reasons, but it's easier, for her to pin it on whatever the topic of the day is. They are still hanging out, you guys. There were photos of them, this spring. Even just as far as 3 or 4 weeks ago, they were at a bar having toasting and she was looking all cute. Fans want them to get back together. Jeremy has been pretty clear that he is interested in rekindling this. And on the reunion show, she even discussed that Addie has picked up on their feelings for one another and what that would, and whether or not they will get together. Who knows? She's in a very different place these days. She successfully completed rehab. As far as I know, she is not actually dealing with addiction anymore, and she's taking care of herself. So for all intents and purposes, this marriage could get back together. Hold on a second, you guys. Okay. This marriage could get back together. Sorry, my mouse died there. This marriage could theoretically get back together. They might start dating again. Who knows? There's a lot at stake, though, for instance, if this didn't work out, because, they still have a different, they still have a kid together, and they still have, but accordingly to all of them, the kids love them. So she is a different person. They're 8 years older. They were they were babies when they met all those years ago. And it's not uncommon, a lot of people that get divorced get remarried down the line, or, a marriage at one point gives up. And Jeremy has even said in the past that he gave up on the marriage way too soon. He wished he would have, put more of an effort into the marriage. But again, he was young and stupid. So it's hard to know where this would go. They've got a lot of baggage, and I don't really know what I would say about this. But for now, she was all talking about the cash that she gave to her dad, and that's why they went kaput. So, interestingly, Kale talked about, her own stuff with money, and she apparently just gives everybody money because she can't say no to anyone because she's a Pisces. And Kale is all about the woo and believes in all kinds of fantasy medicinal things, and also is an anti-vaxxer. So there's Kale. Kale says that because she's a Pisces, she's a go-with-the-flow kind of girl, and she can never say no to anyone. Whenever Kale says she's a go-with-the-flow kind of girl, am I the only one that shakes my head and says, ha, yeah, right. Kale, a go-with-the-flow kind of girl? Yeah, right. Go-with-the-flow kind of people don't pop off and start yelling at people and start fights. Go-with-the-flow kind of people are not controlling and super, I don't even know. Gross. Anyways, Kale is go with the flow, and she wants you to think she's go with the flow, and that's that. Kale is the opposite of go with the flow. She's a controlling woman. She's been controlling in every single relationship she has, although she's seemingly back together with Chris because he shared a photo on Instagram of him and her, and it basically said that he wasn't saying that he loved her, but he was crazy about her, whatever that means. And it was a song with a photo of her, and they were on vacation, and he was on vacation, which they also discussed in this podcast was that Leah was being filmed by MTV for this vacation, which they ultimately spent 3 weeks in Hawaii. Seriously, imagine your life with 3 weeks in Hawaii and you're a teen mom. Raise your hand if you are a teen mom and spend 3 weeks in Hawaii. All right, I'm going to say nobody raises their hands. So, this is where we're at with that. I am interested to see what happens with them. I don't think it would be a bad thing for them to try to get back together. Honestly, they both seem like they're in better places. The biggest issue, though, is that Jeremy still has the same job that seemed to cause a lot of consternation in their marriage before. So, that aspect would not go away. But he seems like he's a lot more chill these days, and he is a lot more interested in Leah. Tell me your thoughts. Do you think they should get back together? Do you think that this is just for the kids and being friendly for the kids? Or do you think this is the start of something new for them since they are both finally single, which doesn't happen frequently with the two of them? And then let me know what you think. Do you think Kale is go with the flow, or would you call her more high strung? I'd say high strung. All right, you guys, tell me in the comments, and then I'll be back later this afternoon. I will be doing a show later today about a mother in Texas. If you appreciate the coverage I do related to cases like Dee Dee Blanchard, you are not going to want to miss this story. A mother in Texas, she actually faked her daughter's diabetes, and I have all the details. So I'll be back later this afternoon, probably around 3 o'clock Central Time, maybe 3:30, and I will see you later. Again, leave me comments and find me on Twitter if you want to know more, and make sure you ring the bell so you know when I go live. Bye.